Welcome to Degree and Me, where we highlight a specific major each week. I'm your host, Christabel, and today's major is Entrepreneurship with Professor Milner and current student Nikko Tamez. Thank you for joining us today, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Of course. So I'm going to start with Professor Milner. So how long have you been here with Sam Houston State University?
So I've been here right at 2 years now.
Okay. Alrighty. So
And
what?
I started here 2 years ago. I had been sort of a visiting lecturer, spoken in different classes, some in communications, some in business,
Okay.
and had participated in some events on campus before I was asked to join the faculty.
Okay. What events were those?
So I came and talked to career day events, and in the communications program, they brought in different business people at the end of each semester to talk about what different career fields were like and how to interview and things like that. So I participated in those. And then I guest lectured in some business classes and a business law class prior to joining faculty.
Okay. So do you suggest business majors kind of have like a communication minor, or what do you suggest about that?
So I think business majors need a really broad background for their minor. I think communications is very important. When you go into business, one of the biggest things that you need to be able to do is communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big challenge for people who enter the workforce if they aren't comfortable with communication skills, because a lot of businesses today, I'm an entrepreneur, I own several businesses, but I also serve on boards with many of the CEOs of the big companies in Houston and the Woodlands, and they look for communication skills when they look for graduates out of college, because shortly after going to work for them, you end up in a group environment working on group projects. And that fear of communication really inhibits the group from being able to accomplish its mission and to work well together. So I think communication is very important. I would highly recommend that anybody who has taken any type of business degree take communication classes and speech. I think speech is very important. People need to be comfortable speaking in front of others. You make a lot of presentations. You represent your business sometimes at events and in the community. And I think communications is one of those core skills that really, in my mind, every business student should have.
Okay. Were you always good at communicating, or how'd you like grow out of it?
Oh no, I'm like the world's most serious introvert. If you were to look at my Myers-Briggs profile, I'm an INFJ, which is seriously the most introverted profile there is. But I was all through school, I was the catcher on the baseball team, the point guard on the basketball team, the quarterback on the football team, and those are coaches, so you're forced to communicate, right? And then as I got older and began to work in business, I decided I wanted to force myself to learn those skills because I never took communication classes in college. So I joined Toastmasters, and they force you to get up and speak in front of people. And that's when I began to become more comfortable with speaking in front of people. And I speak at conferences. The largest group I've probably spoken in front of is about 2,500 people now. And once you get used to it and you're comfortable with it, you don't even notice how many people are there. It's just you're so focused on what you're talking about and making sure that you're delivering a good quality message that it could be 5 people or 2,000 people. It just doesn't, you don't even think about it.
Okay. Good for you. Good for you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Nikko. What year is this for you here at SAM?
So I'm a junior currently. I transferred up here this past January, would start the second year being up here at SAM. Before that I was at Lone Star, and I just got my basics out of the way and then transferred up here.
Okay. What brought you to SAM?
The entrepreneurship program primarily. I was really excited about that when I found out that was offered here. Before that I wanted to major in some type of business. Coming along, I found that I would much prefer to own and run my own companies, and I felt like entrepreneurship was just the major that was going to allow me to do that successfully.
Okay. So I've heard a lot with entrepreneurship, you have to be able to sell yourself. Do you think you can do that right now?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you feel about the program so far?
So far, I'll tell you that I know it's exactly what was meant for me and where I should have been, because how applicable the things I'm learning are in my day-to-day life.
Really? Like what?
So we have a family construction company that was started back in '04. So it's pretty cool to be able to bring knowledge and information that I'm learning through my degree and use it for the company and to benefit us as a whole. So
Okay.
it's actually really, really, really cool.
Is it your dad that owns the company?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he is the founder and the owner.
Oh, okay. Do you plan on like kind of taking over the business?
Yes, so my younger brother, Daniel, he is actually started his own company as well, but the plan is for us as a family to continue to run the business and keep it in the family.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so you come from a background of like entrepreneurship.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, for sure.
Okay. So Professor Milner, where did you go to college and what did you major in exactly?
So my undergraduate, I went to a small college in Missouri called Park University, and my major was in business, and I have a minor in math and a minor in statistics. And then I finally finished my MBA after starting it 3 times as an adult when I was in my mid-50s. But yeah, so
Oh,
I have
congrats.
math and statistics I'm sort of a numbers geek, but it helps a lot in business because you're able to analyze things. I can analyze financial statements and balance sheets and strategy very quickly because of that background.
Okay. So what other like outside experience do you have besides teaching and I guess conference speaking, stuff like that?
So my wife and I own 11 businesses. We have,
Wow.
I'm not actively engaged in them. I have minority partners that run them all now. But we have about 220 employees, and our businesses do about 140 million a year in revenue.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in the car business. I own a virtual reality gaming business. I own a gourmet hot dog and sausage business. We own a consulting practice. I focus on professional practice, so I and some of our team, we do a lot of consulting work with physicians, lawyers, CPA firms. My wife does a lot of financial consulting
Okay.
because that's her background. She was a corporate controller and a CFO. We both retired in January of 18. I say retired. My friends say I'm the busiest retired person in the world. But and when I retired, I always wanted to teach college because I felt like that I had a lot of experience to share, and I felt like people who are going to learn about business should learn about people from people who have been in business, right? Nothing against anybody who teaches business who's never been in business, but I just think I bring a certain experience factor to it that enables my students to really relate to what we talk about and relate to the experience of what it's like either working for a business or owning your own business.
Gotcha. So since you have like kind of businesses in like all areas, so do you like suggest people kind of not narrow down and like, oh, I'm just gonna have a business with like, um, say like food industry? You like, do you kind of suggest we kind of like look everywhere, don't like have an open mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because opportunity is everywhere. I would have never thought I would own a virtual reality gaming business, but my partner and I were in Vegas, and we went to the electronics show there, and we were walking around, and he's a partner that he and I invest in small businesses together, and so we were walking around and we saw this area that was about virtual reality, and we went in and started looking at it, and we're like, hey, this would be really cool. We should try to open a business doing this. And so we were like 2 years ahead of when it happened. When we opened ours, there were only 3 other ones in the country. Now
Oh
there's
wow.
about 50 of them. But we've really enjoyed it. We have all kind of virtual games. We have virtual golf, virtual soccer. We're working on a coaching program that's virtual where kids can come in and have virtual coaches that teach them on pitching, catching, being a goalie, and hitting. But the really cool thing that happened is when the pandemic hit, we had to close our business. So we were sitting around trying to think of what should we do, and we got together and we developed a STEAM program that's virtual based. And we started working with a homeschooling co-op in the area, and
Oh
we
wow.
provided, they would come into our facility, it would be closed, and they would go through the STEAM program virtually. And so then we got a grant from the Texas Workforce Commission to develop a program for autistic children. And we
Really?
did a 25 student pilot the last 4 months of last year that finished up in January, and the results were just incredible.
Aw.
Because autistic learners are very kinesthetic learners, they're neural, and they use their mind and senses in their learning process. And the results were so good, they asked us to bid a project for a much larger autistic project for one of the local CISDs. So we're in the process of putting that together now. But yeah,
Wow. So innovation isn't done. We're
innovation
always,
is not done.
I
No,
love it. I
no,
love it. I
nope.
feel like so much is already invented, and I kind of get like, okay, where's the next big thing? You know, like we're all craving that next big thing, but that's
Everything
awesome.
is the next big thing. You know, I tell my students several things. One, life is entrepreneurship. If you want to think about what entrepreneurship is, it is thinking about possibility and how to execute possibility, right?
Gotcha.
That's life. Every day of our life, we think about the possibilities that we have in our life. So that's really part of what entrepreneurship is. The other thing is entrepreneurship is really creating a pretty solid strategic plan and a good strong budget. Well, life is about having a strategy, a purpose, a budget. A lot of people go through life and they really don't know what their purpose is until they get older. And I work with my students and then young people that I mentor to get them think about what your purpose in life is today, so that as you walk your path and your journey, you can really stay focused to what your goals are. And I think that's a challenge sometimes when you don't want to know really know yet who you really want to be or what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why as you move through that, you need to be open to everything, okay? I grew up poor in Memphis, Tennessee, honestly. I never thought I would own a Mercedes dealership, but I did.
Wow.
But, you know, as I went through life, I began to really think about life is for everybody. You just have to be aware of when possibilities are presented to you. And a lot of people don't realize a possibility or an opportunity when it's presented to them, and they walk past it and never know that they had an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wouldn't have been for other mentors and stuff who helped me get into my first business, I might not have ever seen the opportunities and possibilities either. But
Yeah. So that's kind of why you want to get into teaching, is to help people like learn what you learned.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So a little more about the businesses. How did the process go when you were starting a business?
Well, I mean, he can tell you because we went through it in class, but you know, you really have to have a solid plan. And, you know, we work on a very condensed version of that plan in my class, which is the intro startup class. But by the time I opened my first business, I had a spreadsheet that had about 100 tabs to it and about 1,300 items in it. And different members of our team were focused on this items on a timeline to get things done. It requires a lot of planning up front. You know, you have to have money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have enough money to survive. You know, there's this journey in a new business that's sort of called the road to death. The majority of businesses fail in the first 3 years.
I've heard that.
And they fail for one of several reasons, one of which they don't understand cash flow and they run out of cash. Or another one, they don't ever really identify who their primary customer is. So they waste their time trying to be a solution to everybody, right?
Gotcha.
And while Procter & Gamble can market shampoo to everybody in the world, most small businesses can't market themselves or their product to everybody in the world. So they have to really understand how to target in and maintain that focus so that they don't waste money and effort.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, thank you. That was good advice.
Sure.
Okay, Nikko. What are some of the most interesting aspects of this major?
Most interesting aspects, I would say just the people that you meet that are in your classes and in the major, to hear what they plan to do, and to like bounce ideas off of, like to me is a really, really amazing part of the being in an entrepreneurship. To have that camaraderie and similar interest is something really cool.
Okay, what kind of ideas are like tossed around?
Just people wanting to start their first businesses. I mean, some people want to start a t-shirt or a clothing brand. You'll meet people. I want to open and run a gym at some point. We, and actually in your class, developed a business plan or model for that. So it's just a lot of different aspects to it.
One of the cool things I think is not to interrupt, but
No, no, no.
you know, one of the things that happens is for those students that don't really see themselves as like opening a business, but they're taking the class either as a minor or to fulfill some other requirements. I force them to come up with a business idea, even if they make it up. And I've had several students that went through this process, and after the semester reached out to me and said, I never thought about owning a business, but after going through this process, I've identified a business idea that I really would like to open when I graduate. So I think part of that collaboration Nikko talks about with students, as you begin to talk with each other and share ideas and bounce ideas back and forth, your creative juices flow. And I think you open your mind up to possibilities that maybe you didn't know were there. And so one of the things we focus on a lot in my class is mindset, and how to really open yourself up to having a growth mindset. And we talk about how to apply it as a student at SAM and progress through your courses and your assignments, but then we also talk about how to implement it in life. And I think what happens, Nikko talks about, this collaboration, working in groups and sharing ideas. And when you open your mindset up and you really focus on that growth, you see so much opportunity, even if it's small opportunities in the beginning.
Okay. Can you go into a little detail about the growth mindset y'all talk about?
Yeah, so the vast majority of people are raised with more of a fixed mindset. As kids, we grow up in a very structured environment. Do this then, do this now, meal times and all of these things. And so that can limit our awareness. And so there's been a lot of research, and Dr. Dweck was one of the people that did it. She went back to New York City and she did a bunch of research in school systems, and she focused on possibility, and she focused on this thing that's called not yet. So when this group of students would work on their projects, some might do very well and some might not do very well, but rather than give students a bad grade, she would give them a not yet as the grade. And then say, if you go back and think about this, the possibility is this. And what she learned in this group of students is that when they began to use this not yet, students didn't see themselves as not doing well or potentially failing. They really saw themselves as not quite being there yet, right? And the other thing I think that is important in life and for students is, and I work very hard as a professor to do this, is give students very quick victories early. So you give them short, small assignments that allow them to be successful, and it begins to build that positive mindset and that growth mindset. So they start the semester off doing well as opposed to feeling like they're not doing well. And so in my classes, they tend to get, a little bit more difficult each phase through the semester, but we build through that because I want to help them develop that open and growth mindset in the beginning. And I focus a lot on effort as much I do the material itself. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think, the other thing to growth mindset is you need to, I try to work with them to understand. I give them several articles to read. Some of them are focused on being a student, and some of them are focused on being a business person. And it shows contrast of people who did not have a growth mindset and how things turned out, and for people who had a growth mindset and how things turned out.
Okay. So what are the most interesting aspects of this major that you would say?
I think one of the most interesting aspects to me of the major is it prepares someone to go do whatever they want to do. So let's think about that. The vast majority of my students aren't going to go open a business when they graduate. They don't have the money, right? Now some, like Nikko, may go home and work in a family business, and quite a few of my students do. But what they walk away from with this major is the skills necessary to go engage in that business, right? So that they can contribute effectively right away. But if you're going to graduate from STEM and go to work for a business somewhere, those same skill sets apply, because innovation is everywhere in business today, right? And entrepreneurship is innovation. It is thinking about the possibility. So if you go to work for a small business, a medium-sized business, I've had students that have been hired by Accenture and Ernst & Young in big jobs, but it's the same thing. When you go to work for someone, they want you to be part of who they become. Most businesses want to know what your perspective is, because, let's face it, our largest customer base in the world today is your generation and the generation before you, right? So if we don't understand how to conduct business with them, as businesses, we're not going to be successful. And your mindset, the mindset of the generation before you, are very important to businesses bringing that mindset in so they can continue to evolve and innovate.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were that large of
Yeah,
a
your
group.
generation and the generation before. My generation was, but we're retiring, so
Yeah.
you're taking over.
Love it. So, do you suggest people in entrepreneurship to like work for someone else, not like jump straight into starting a business unless you have the funds and stuff like that, or what do you suggest?
I mean, I think it depends. Some people just have that drive and passion that even if they bootstrap it, meaning they start a business with very tight funds, that's what they really want to do. There aren't a lot of students like that. A lot of students still have a little bit of that fear factor in them. So what I suggest is if you take the skills that you learn in our program and engage when you go to work for someone. Don't be afraid to engage respectfully and responsibly. And then you'll develop your confidence in those things, and you'll also learn more about business, right? And then you take those things that you learn and the skills that you develop and your understanding of what it takes to start a business. And at some point in your life, 3, 5, 7 years down the road, then you might be ready to go start your own business. And skill-wise and confidence-wise, you may be better prepared. Not everybody's prepared to go start a business as soon as they graduate.
Is it because of, why do you think that? Because of funds and stuff like that?
I think it's primarily funds and then fear.
Oh, okay.
Because think about it. As a college graduate, you've grown up, you graduate from college, you've never really been 100% self-survival.
Oh, okay. Okay. So do you feel like you have that fear a little bit?
I don't. I'm gonna be honest. My biggest thing right now is time. Finding enough time in the day to get what I need to get done. But I don't. I think the way my dad raised us kind of eliminated the possibility of having that fear factor going into something.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of what I know now is because of him, and so there's a great deal of respect I have for him for that.
Okay, what did he teach you?
So, I mean, my mom. So I was homeschooled all the way through. My mom taught me the educational side, and my dad taught me the life and business aspects growing up. So anything from how to gut a fish to basically how to run a company. We were not too long ago. We had a couple of big jobs. We did a job for Exxon Mobil power plant. So for him to take a business from nothing to that level just blows my mind. So
It's inspiring, huh?
yes, absolutely.
Cool. Alrighty. So, Nikko, what advice would you give to someone that's in this major?
I mean, the one piece of advice, if I had to give something, would be to just go for it. Don't be afraid to try something new and do what you're passionate about. Those would be two things, I guess, that I would recommend.
Okay.
For sure.
Alrighty. Okay. So what advice would you give to students in this major?
Go for it. I didn't own my first business until I was 54 years old
Oh, wow.
because I was afraid to. I grew up in an environment, my parents, you worked for the same company for 40 years, retired, you had a retirement. Knowing what I know now, when I was in my late 20s, I would have either got into a franchise or started my own business and continued to pursue it until I was successful at it.
Gotcha.
So-
Well, alrighty. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and a special thanks to Professor Milner and student Nikko for showcasing this department. And remember, education is key, so do it right with Degree in Me.